The hidden lives and scandals of nuns. Nuns are women who devote their lives to religious service, often living in convents or monasteries. Their commitment to their faith is marked by vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. While the specific practices and the roles they fulfill may vary by religious tradition, nuns generally lead lives of contemplation, prayer, and community service. The history of nuns is long and diverse, stretching back over many centuries. Their roles have evolved, as has the perception of their lives and work within society. The role of nuns are integral to the functioning of religious communities, primarily within Christianity, although the concept of a nun or similar role exists in other faith traditions as well. Nuns dedicate their lives to religious worship, prayer, and charitable work, often engaging in teaching, healthcare, and social services. They often lead lives separated from the secular world in convents or monasteries, focusing on spiritual growth and service. Nuns can also be involved in missionary work, helping the underprivileged or working in educational or healthcare institutions. Why do women become nuns? Women become nuns for a variety of reasons. For some, the decision is driven by a deep spiritual calling, desire to dedicate their lives fully to God and religious service. Others may be drawn to the sense of community and the opportunity to live a life of contemplation, free from the distractions of the outside world. Historically, becoming a nun also provided women with a certain level of autonomy and a respected role in society, especially in times when women's opportunities were limited. In many cultures, joining a convent was one of the few options available for women seeking independence or a meaningful role outside family structure. Are nuns misused sexually in the church or convents? The issue of sexual abuse within the church, including instances involving nuns, has become an increasingly prominent topic in recent decades. While it is essential to recognize that the vast majority of nuns led their lives with dignity and commitment to their faith, numerous scandals have surfaced involving nuns being sexually abused by priests or other clergy members. These cases have drawn public outrage and led to significant investigations and calls for reform within religious institutions. Some stories of abuse, particularly those of nuns being forced into sexual relations with priests or other church officials, have been part of broader investigations into sexual abuse scandals in the Catholic Church. The Vatican has at times been criticized for failing to adequately address these issues and for being slow to respond to allegations of abuse. The abuse of nuns is a tragic part of this history, and efforts continue to address these wrongs, provide justice for survivors, and prevent future incidents. True stories and scandals involving nuns. One well-known scandal occurred in the late 20th century and involved the infamous case of the Mother Teresa and the Missionaries of Charity in Kolkata, India. Critics have alleged that some of the women working for Mother Teresa were subjected to a variety of hardships, including mistreatment and emotional abuse, as they worked in extremely poor conditions under her leadership. However, it is essential to acknowledge that the allegations of sexual abuse in relation to Mother Teresa herself remain contentious and have not been definitively proven. Another well-known case of scandal surrounding nuns is the story of the Nun of Kent, Sister Margaret. In the 16th century, Margaret, a nun in the Abbey of Kent, was seduced by a priest and eventually became pregnant, which led to a public scandal. The case of the Nun of Kent illustrates the potential vulnerabilities that some women in religious orders faced, and the risks that could come with a life of servitude under the power of church authorities. While such stories are disturbing, it is important to note that these instances are not reflective of the broader experience of most nuns, who live their lives dedicated to their religious calling and who work for the benefit of others. Famous nuns in history. Several nuns have achieved historical fame for their religious service, charity work, or political impact. Among the most famous are Mother Teresa. Perhaps the most well-known nun in the modern era, Mother Teresa devoted her life to caring for the poor and sick in Kolkata, India. Her work through the missionaries of charity earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. Though her legacy is debated by some, especially regarding her methods and affiliations, she remains a symbol of selfless service. Saint Teresa of Avila, a 16th-century Spanish mystic, writer, and reformer of the Carmelite order. Saint Teresa of Avila is revered for her profound spiritual insight and for her work in establishing reformed convents in Spain. Her writings remain influential in Christian mysticism. Sister Helen Prejean, an American nun and activist, Sister Prejean became famous for her advocacy against the death penalty, particularly her work with death row inmates. Her story was depicted in the film Dead Man Walking. Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, known as the Little Flower, Thérèse of Lisieux is one of the most beloved saints in the Catholic Church. She was a Carmelite nun who lived a life of humility and simplicity, and she was canonized for her deep spirituality. How many nuns exist today? The number of nuns worldwide has been in decline over the past few decades. As of recent estimates, there are approximately 600,000 nuns worldwide, but this number continues to shrink due to various factors, including fewer women entering religious life, changing social norms, and the aging population of nuns. The largest number of nuns is found in countries with strong Catholic or Orthodox Christian traditions, though nuns exist in other religious contexts as well. Which country has the most nuns? The countries with the most nuns are typically those with the largest Catholic populations, particularly in Latin America, Europe, and parts of Asia. As of recent reports, Italy, India, and the Philippines are among the countries with the highest number of nuns. The Philippines, in particular, has seen a significant number of women enter religious life, and nuns are integral to both religious and social services in the country. Do nuns receive salaries? Can they marry and have children? In general, nuns do not receive a salary in the conventional sense. Many live in communal settings where their basic needs are met through the orders to which they belong. Some nuns may receive stipends or allowances to cover personal expenses, but the idea is that their needs are provided for by the religious community, not by a salary. Nuns do not marry or have children, as their vows of chastity require celibacy. They commit to a life of service and devotion, which includes dedicating themselves entirely to God and the religious order. When was the first nun? The concept of a nun, or a woman devoted to religious life, has its roots in early Christianity. The first nuns were likely women who followed the example of early Christian saints and ascetics, such as St. Paul, who encouraged women to live celibate lives dedicated to spiritual service. The first formal religious communities for women emerged in the 4th century, with figures like Saint Pachomius in Egypt and Saint Jerome's promotion of female monasticism. Over time, various religious orders and communities were established for women, each with its own unique rules and traditions. Nuns have been and continue to be an essential part of religious and social life across the world. Their lives are dedicated to faith, service, and prayer, and while their roles have evolved, they remain integral to the functioning of many religious communities. The scandals that have marred the history of some nuns are tragic, but they should not overshadow the tremendous contributions of countless women who have dedicated their lives to helping others. As the world continues to change, so too does the life of a nun, though their commitment to faith and service endures. Have you ever paused to ponder what occurred beyond the prayers and medieval monasteries? Many people assume that monks and nuns lived in total austerity, never yielding to urges or wants. However, when we delve deeper, we uncover tales that expose a daily existence far from this idealized image. To comprehend this world, picture a serene scene encircled by stone walls. On the surface, everything appears calm, orderly, and devoted to religious life. But beneath the surface, passions and secrets swirled, hidden from the view of outsiders. It is within this contrast that we find accounts of actions considered scandalous, carefully concealed by those wishing to maintain their appearances. These actions weren't merely acts of impulse. Amidst the religious routines, moments of boredom and curiosity served as the spark for repressed desires. Furthermore, the daily interactions among individuals of varying ages and backgrounds fostered connections that surpassed the boundaries allowed by monastic rules. This is how prohibited relationships arose, leaving their imprint on the history of monasteries. At night, when the monastery gates were shut, medieval monks allowed themselves freedoms that often don't appear in traditional accounts. During the day, they adhered to a basic diet of bread, fruits, vegetables, and minimal protein. However, when darkness fell, opportunities arose for these religious men to gather and indulge in food and drink with enthusiasm. Fasting was a common practice, generally respected, but it wasn't as stringent as many believe. On feast days or special occasions, banquets would emerge, featuring fish, shellfish, and beverages like wine and beer, often consumed liberally. While meat was forbidden in many monastic communities, exceptions were made for illnesses or special needs, expanding the variety of foods available. These nighttime gatherings, along with the substantial bread intake, reveal that the monks' lifestyle wasn't as severe as often depicted. Many were overweight, which could also be attributed to a less active schedule and periods of inactivity. Overall, it's evident that despite their vows and societal expectations, they found ways to gratify their desires. Some monastic communities upheld the practice of consuming up to a loaf and a half of bread per person, suggesting a rather indulgent eating habit. Beer also held a prominent role in their everyday lives, not only to stave off hunger but also as a craft mastered by monk brewers who created high-quality brews. However, when monks overindulged, the results ranged from fits of laughter to bold tales, surprising behavior from those expected to exemplify austerity and faith. These moments of excess were not confined to food and drink. The repetitive task of copying books and manuscripts was tedious, and the monks sought ways to entertain themselves during their boredom. They began doodling in the margins of pages, and while many might envision simple decorations, there was much more to these drawings. They sketched images that conveyed humor, frustration, and desires, rarely seen in their monastic routines, offering peek into a world of contradictions. In medieval monasteries, the monotonous routine of manuscript copying was exhausting and repetitive. As they filled page after page with identical words, some monks found relief in the illustrations they added to the corners of the paper. They sketched rabbits, warriors, elephants, and even snails, often in playful scenes. What most people don't realize is that this was the birth of something we now call emoticons, those small symbols used to express emotions in texts and on social media. They began as doodles in the margins, providing an outlet for boredom and frustration. This curious behavior wasn't limited to monks. In some convents, nuns also faced daily tensions and occasionally found ways to bend the rules. When night fell, some would place candles in their windows, signaling that they were open to temptation. And it didn't end there. In secret meetings, breaking the vows they had taken, they revealed that despite their religious lives, they were still driven by the same human impulses. When night fell, the separate bed and vows of chastity often lost their hold within the shelter of stone walls. Nuns would welcome men of various ages, following a path strictly forbidden by the church. It's hard to imagine a monastery where vows were secretly broken, but that's precisely what occurred, transforming these places into centers of suppressed desires. However, these secrets weren't confined to clandestine meetings. Some convents operated what were known as Magdalene houses, established to provide shelter to women seeking to rebuild their lives. In theory, these homes were intended to cleanse the behavior of their inhabitants, but in reality, many of them served as a means to handle venereal diseases. Concealing an issue the church preferred not to confront openly. In medieval convents, it wasn't just monks who defied the church's rules. Nuns also yielded to desires that went well beyond any regulations, often without any intervention from the higher-ups. Surprisingly, this is only a glimpse of what truly occurred back then. Rather than being places of purity and devotion, some monasteries were filled with stories of indulgence and hidden passions. The vows of chastity and obedience were frequently mere facades for those residing there. Ultimately, many succumbed to the same pleasures they publicly sought to avoid. If this story caught you off guard, don't forget to like, share with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more secrets like this. The Middle Ages hold far more than we can imagine. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and remember, sometimes what happens in monasteries doesn't stay within those walls. Medieval monasteries have always been associated with devotion and purity, but was everything as sacred as they claim? On special nights like Christmas, whispers through the halls reveal that the line between holiness and sin could be surprisingly thin. They say when the moon hung over the monastery, and everyone was supposedly asleep, silent figures would cross dimly lit corridors. Nuns dressed in black would quietly leave their cells, torn between fear and a strange sense of anticipation. They would head to hidden spots near the walls where secret meetings took place under the cover of darkness. The religious customs and strict rules of monastic life didn't always prevent these acts of transgression. From the outside, the stone walls symbolized a sacred refuge, but for those within, those same walls became the backdrop for events that didn't always match the ideals of faith and renunciation upheld by the institution. Some ancient accounts suggest that during Christmas celebrations, certain monasteries became centers for unconventional activities. In a 10th and 11th century Italian convent, for instance, secret tunnels were discovered connecting the site to noble palaces. These pathways weren't just escape routes for nuns feeling trapped by the monastic routine, but also facilitated secret meetings with high-ranking men, even during the most solemn of celebrations. What began as simple sharing of bread and wine soon became bolder, crossing every line set by the church. It's easy to imagine the scandal that would have erupted had these stories become public at the time, but this was just a small part of a larger picture. Many women joined convents against their will, sent there by families seeking to protect their honor or avoid unwanted commitments. This blend of celebrations, secrets, and hidden pathways shows that monastic life in some instances went far beyond the appearance of devotion. When women entered convents, they faced the church's strict regulations, but Christmas often offered a chance to challenge those norms. In some places, they transformed these spaces into hubs of learning and collaboration, creating a form of resistance that reflected deeper desires for autonomy. In a 15th century French monastery, for example, a secret library held manuscripts on alchemy, astrology, and the natural sciences, while the church held official Christmas Mass. At night, the nuns gathered to read and discuss these forbidden texts, exchanging simple gifts like small herb blends and recipes that went beyond what was acceptable under ecclesiastical authority. The pursuit of knowledge wasn't their only act of defiance. Some nuns longed for greater personal freedom and formed bonds of solidarity in secret meetings near the convent walls, particularly during Christmas celebrations. These moments gave them the courage to look beyond the restrictions of their time, keeping alive a rebellious spirit that emerged in the quiet intervals between prayer and silence during the year-end festivities. Stories are told about nuns who, under the cover of darkness, adopted false identities to blend in with the local population. Others orchestrated elaborate escapes using secret passages and coded signals known only to them. In one notable case, at a German convent, a group of nuns arranged late-night meetings with noble knights on Christmas Eve, sparking suspicions that quickly caught the attention of religious authorities. Despite efforts to cover up the scandal, some documents detail these events, shedding light on lesser-known aspects of monastic life. Not all meetings had a romantic tone. Often, they were linked to practical tasks benefiting the surrounding community, such as preparing remedies and offering medical care. During this time of year, illnesses and accidents were more common due to the cold and poor living conditions. And the nuns played an essential role in creating balms and herbal infusions from plants. While many viewed these treatments as miraculous, the risk of being accused of forbidden practices also grew. There were always those who eyed them with suspicion, labeling them as potential witches. In medieval monastic life, little-known rituals emerged that blended Christian practices with older traditions, particularly during the Christmas season. In some Spanish convents, records point to hidden altars where nuns gathered by candlelight to chant ancient hymns and use symbolic objects that went beyond official religious norms. Though described as Christmas celebrations, these ceremonies had roots predating Christianity, revealing a mystical dimension absent from official accounts. Not all events, however, involved direct defiance of church authorities. In certain regions, abbesses held as much power as local nobles. These leaders managed vast estates, were associated with kings, and provided refuge to women fleeing unwanted marriages or societal restrictions. In one remarkable case, a 12th century French abbey declared itself independent from the bishopric, offering a safe haven to those seeking a new path in life. These examples show that the routine in many convents extended beyond prayers and moments of reflection, leaving room for initiatives of autonomy, protection, and learning, even during year-end festivities. Behind the walls, transformations were occurring that challenged the conventional image of cloistered life, revealing a far more complex reality than most historical documents suggest.